dropshipping, the barrier to entry is low as a business model, but the real barrier to entry is distraction. From my own business, there were a few key moments where I focused on what matters, cut out some distractions, and my revenue jumped because of it. Being able to cut through the noise and figure out what truly does generate revenue. Because if you can do that, you are at a distinct advantage. I remember, and I can't believe I used to live like this. They're picking out the chandelier for their house before they built the thing. It is the difference between people that are going to be really successful and people that aren't going to be successful. I believe will come down to the focus. The 3 pillars for dropshipping that I would say result in you getting from zero to having a successful business up and running, if I had to really boil it down to just the 3 core pillars, would be Welcome to the Dropship Unlocked podcast. I'm Lewis Smith, the founder of Dropship Unlocked, and with me is our client success coach, James Eardley. Now, when we're not recording the podcast episodes, we're running our own e-commerce businesses and helping aspiring entrepreneurs launch their own high-ticket dropshipping businesses. Keen to build your own 6 or even 7-figure business? My book, The Home Turf Advantage, is your blueprint for launching a profitable online store. Grab your copy at htabook.com today and let's get you started. Now sit back, relax, and let's unlock your potential with the Dropship Unlocked podcast. Today's episode is all about focusing on the most important things in your business so that your energy goes to what matters so you can get the most out of your dropshipping business. We're going to uncover the art of prioritizing those income-producing tasks. So, Lewis, the path to efficiency is lined with distractions, isn't it? Definitely is, yeah. And income-producing tasks, like you mentioned, are key. But it's one thing to say that word and that phrase, but it's another thing to actually be very clear in your own mind what those mean for you in your specific circumstances. So, yeah, it's a noisy world out there in startup entrepreneurship, trying to create an online e-commerce business. So it's a real skill and an art, as you say, being able to cut through the noise and figure out what truly does generate revenue. Because if you can do that, you are at a distinct advantage to all of the people that are out there having a go, but are getting distracted along their journey. So yeah, in today's episode, we're going to dive into why focus is not just about doing more and being busy, but more importantly, doing more of what actually matters. And that's the key. You can be busy and not get anything done at the end of the day if you're not focused on the tasks that really make the difference. And I know from my own business, there were a few key moments where I focused on what matters, cut out some distractions, and my revenue jumped because of it. So it really does make a huge difference in the real world to your businesses that we're running. So Lewis, let's start by defining focus in the context of building an e-commerce or online business. What's your take on this foundational skill? Yeah, focus, the way I see it, is really just the ability to direct your attention and your efforts towards a goal that you've decided without getting sidetracked, which is a very difficult skill to do in itself. It's, in horse racing where they put the blinders on horses so that they can only see forward. So it's like they're not distracted by people moving in the crowds or things like that. And they're just looking towards the finish line. It's the same for us as entrepreneurs. And when you're taking a photo, if you've got kind of like a manual camera and you're trying to focus in on whatever the subject of the image is, you have to make sure it's in focus and get that sharp image, or otherwise it's going to be blurry. And it's kind of the same in this. Like, you think of the subject of your camera as your goal in entrepreneurship. If you don't have clear, proper focus on what that goal is, difficult, the outcome is blurry, and it's what that comes down to in entrepreneurship is incorrect or improper execution of the goal, and you don't actually achieve it because you never really knew what it was in the first place. So it's very, very easy to get distracted, to procrastinate, and to lose that focus. But it really is crucial because in dropshipping, the barrier to entry is low as a business model, but the real barrier to entry is distraction. It's like the Netflix, it's the social media, it's the shiny new business model that someone tells you about that you think, oh, my head's been turned and like, maybe I should look at that instead. That's really the barrier to entry. So it's almost like a mental battle within your own mind to get the business up and running. Yeah, completely agree. That is a really vivid picture of what focus means. And I think especially now in today's age, probably more than ever before, we are pulled in all different directions. And when you have an online business and when you're your own boss, you are the only person that can bring you back out of that distraction to focus on the income producing tasks. Another analogy to liken it to, I think, is actually in the health, in fitness, and sort of losing weight aspect. And I think sometimes people get distracted on the distractions that don't make the huge difference. So it's like not focusing on what food you're eating, instead thinking, I must make sure I drink 2 mugs of peppermint tea today, and thinking that will make the difference. But ultimately, it's the real focus. It's actually the calorie deficit. And in our dropshipping businesses, there are a few simple actions that we must take to really focus on producing the income instead of other tasks. So why do you think focus is particularly critical when someone is just starting out with the business?
Well, I guess first question is, are you saying that I can't just drink peppermint tea to offset having a McDonald's for lunch every day? Is that not?
I don't think it quite works like that, but that's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, I like it. Well, so I think when you're new, every opportunity or tactic that you get presented with as an entrepreneur, certainly online, because everything's so kind of flashy and exciting and like quickly launched, it almost looks like, oh, this could be the golden ticket. This will be my reason, my way out of the 9 to 5. But without the right focus on one model, you risk spreading yourself too thin across lots of them. They say jack of all trades, master of none. You don't want to be the jack of all trades where you do a little bit of this. And I had a go at FBA, and I dabbled with print on demand, and I did a little bit of dropshipping from China, and I did a bit of this and social media marketing and affiliate. And, it's like, well, do you have a business, or do you just have like lots of half-baked ideas that never really got executed and pulled together? So it's like if you're building a house, I think the analogy with this is that you've got to lay strong foundations before you start thinking about like decorations and which chandelier shall I get, which pictures on the wall shall I get, what TV shall I get. Like, you need to build the house first. Do that first, because later a lot of these exciting business strategies, marketing techniques, ad techniques, things like that you get presented with, certainly when you're an entrepreneur, if your social media feeds or anything like ours, you're going to be seeing these ads all the time. These are all great add-ons once you have the stable business up and running, but you've got to get the foundations in place first. That's the biggest thing that I see early stage entrepreneurs fall down with, is that they just get so excited and so distracted, but they mistake being busy and absorbing information for productivity. And actually, sometimes the most productive people are the people that just they don't look at anything else. They just have one model and they say, well, I'm just going to follow this to a T. Instead of reading 10 books, they just read the same book until they really, really understand it, and follow that model. So I know that if you can focus on activities that directly produce revenue in your business, so things like to make that less abstract and to put that into reality for a dropshipping business, that would be market research. So like doing the research on which product can I sell. But then once you've done that research, even if you're not, even if it's not 100% perfect, because it never is with market research, it's not an exact science, you move ahead and you execute and you decide to get the business up and running regardless. And then signing suppliers, that in itself is a huge revenue generating activity. Not because when you call the supplier, you're going to get money directly there and then, but because when you sign them and upload their products, you could be earning money from those digital assets, their product on your website for years to come from one phone call. Like, I've experienced it multiple times. I know you have too. And then the other thing is optimizing ads, or really it's bigger than that. It's optimizing marketing within your business, advertising and marketing. So if that means diving into your Klaviyo email sequences to figure out which flows are not performing as well as they could be, which ad strategies are getting you a high ROAS, which ones are not, which ones are loss making, which ones do you need to switch off or optimize. Like, these things are the high impact tasks. So yeah, I think I always try to focus on that stuff, or have team members now who focus on those things rather than getting lost in the peripheral activities.
Yeah, so important, because it is the difference between people that are going to be really successful and people that aren't going to be successful. I believe will come down to the focus. And if they are purely focused on e-commerce and they've not got distractions elsewhere, then they're the people that will notice when something's not right, or notice what's working, because they've got the headspace to really focus on those things. And to put it into my story, when I first decided I was going to get into online business, the temptation, as you mentioned as well, is that you are looking at so many different YouTube videos and you're looking at all the different options out there that you can become overwhelmed. And actually anything more than just focusing on one single model and one single way of doing something that you can see has worked for other people becomes a distraction, because it's just taking you away from that one model that you need to follow, that is the one that will take you to where you want to get to. So anything over than that is a distraction. And it's so easy to fall into, though, because there are so many shiny objects around, especially on YouTube, and the distractions that come in left, right, and center. But the difference for me was, as soon as I decided on one single model, I could then decide that was the way that I was going to go, and everything else was a distraction. And I just needed to follow the step-by-step guidance. And I think people are still falling into this trap, and probably now more than ever with more content being out there. And the reason why we discussed this topic today actually came from a question inside the Launchpad community. And somebody was asking us, like, what are the income producing tasks and how can you stay focused on them? So I think there is a real problem out there of staying focused and not getting distracted. So speaking of distractions, because I think they are a major hurdle for anyone to make a real success of a business, what strategies do you recommend for people for avoiding distractions and staying on track?
Yeah, it is good to employ strategies where you can, and techniques and tactics. If there are tools you can use, like there's that Eisenhower box that you can use to differentiate the urgent and important tasks. That's quite a helpful one. And then you can kind of, rather than just having a to-do list that is in the order in which you wrote the things down in, put all of those things into a graph like that in a box that allows you to say, well, it's urgent but not important, or important but not urgent, and then like figure out what do you need to work on, and focus then relentlessly on the important things, the income producing activities. It's like if you're in your garden, we had the gardener here the other day putting down like weed killer on the grass to try and prevent the weeds from like taking over, because if you just leave it over time, it's just going to become this like rewilded mess of weeds everywhere. And it's, if you want a lawn, you got to, it's kind of the same with your mind. If you want it to be like a clean canvas, well, you've got to kind of very frequently go in and just prune and remove the things, the distractions, those little tasks that are taking up your mental bandwidth. They're growing in the lawn, but they're not contributing to the end goal of what you want. The clear headspace, the successful business. So another thing you can do, turn your phone notifications off on all the apps. I usually have my phone on Do Not Disturb, but when I don't, I definitely have all the notifications for pretty much every app off. And then you can set specific times for batch checking your emails and social media as well. Make sure that you're not logging in the morning and going straight to the inbox and letting whoever else's priorities are in that inbox dictate where you take your day. It's easier said than done. I get it that it's not always practical, but you can definitely bake this into a kind of a routine so that your anxiety is not building up from like the emails that are unseen that are building up in the inbox, because you will tackle them, but just at batched times throughout the day. So you can kind of designate those time blocks for really deep work and just prioritize the highest priority tasks that you have, and really focus your time on those.
And get those done crucially early, first thing in the day, really, ideally, to make sure that they get done. And anything else beyond that is a bonus. But I know that I used to have a real issue with the notifications on my phone. So I'm glad you mentioned it, because I remember, and I can't believe I used to live like this, but every few minutes, every 10 minutes, every 20 minutes, there'd be some sort of notification that I'd allow to pop through on my phone. And every time it comes through, it's a reason to look away from whatever you're focusing on, look at your phone, even if it's something that you can ignore, but it just takes you out of that moment. And then I learned all about task switching and the cognitive load that it takes away from your brain power whenever you look at a distraction, even just for 5 seconds. I believe it's like a case of being about 10 to 12 minutes that it takes for you to actually get back into focusing on the task again, even after a short distraction like that. So as soon as I learned about these things and realized the hugely detrimental impact it was going to have on the focus that I had, as you have done as well, Lewis, just have to mute all notifications, spend the majority of the day on Do Not Disturb, because otherwise you're just asking for trouble. You're asking to be distracted from left, right, and center. So we've touched on the income producing tasks and how important they are. Hopefully we're getting that across. But could you elaborate now on what these actually are for a dropshipping business?
Yeah, absolutely. In my opinion, and this will differ, depending on who you listen to, but for me, the 3 pillars for dropshipping that I would say result in you getting from zero to having a successful business up and running, if I had to really boil it down to just the 3 core pillars, would be signing new suppliers, because that's the bit that everyone procrastinates about. No one wants to make the calls, like get that bit done, get the good suppliers on board, sign them up, get the products live. The next would be then adding products that are in demand, because you've got the suppliers, but are the suppliers even ones with products that people want? Because we see this as well. Sometimes someone will say, I've signed 4 suppliers, but they're suppliers that no one really is looking for or searching for. And when you're creating a retail dropshipping business like we are, you're not coming into the market with a big name. So you are leveraging the popularity of the brands that you sign with. Now, one of the best ways to get fast sales is to just sign brands that are already in demand, So that would be one of the key pillars as well. And then I think the third would just be, like we said, optimizing ads and marketing, making sure that you're getting more reach through ads, making sure you're getting better conversions through, when I say marketing, I'm referring to like email marketing, social media marketing, and even like on-site marketing. Like what is the messaging, the offer, what is how clear and conversion rate optimized is your landing page, your product page? Like, is there a reason why people might not buy from you, but they would buy from a competitor? Tweak those things. And then they're kind of like the engine, the chassis, the wheels of your car. You put all those bits together, and then you really have a solid vehicle that can kind of take you from, okay, I don't have a business right now, to, right, I'm up and running, and I've freed up some headspace because I've now got some money to invest and bring in software and team members and things like that, get a virtual assistant, to start focusing on some of the more, maybe the distractions can be quite fun, quite interesting. There's always new stuff being released, people talking about new tools. Well, maybe you do want to test those things and try them. And that's part of the fun, I think, of being an entrepreneur. You get to explore these things. But I think the danger is people try and do that exploratory phase too early. They're picking out the chandelier for their house before they built the thing. Like, get the thing built first. And then focus on building those strong relationships with those suppliers. So once you've signed those suppliers, it's one thing just signing them, but make sure you've got a good ongoing relationship with them. Regularly update your product offerings based on what your customers are telling you. Is there a feedback loop you can implement into your business that after a customer either buys or even more importantly doesn't buy, what can they tell you about why they didn't buy? Did you not have a certain type of product on your store that they were looking for? Was there a brand you don't yet have that they wanted? Continually be testing this stuff, tweaking it, optimizing your ads. And so we can go really deep into this stuff. And specifically, there's an episode we did on suppliers as well, like UK suppliers who offer next day delivery to customers. And that was episode 22, I believe, of the DSU podcast, which was titled How to Sign UK Dropshipping Suppliers. And we dived really deep into the effective strategies in that episode for actually securing and signing those premium UK suppliers.
And that's a crucial part. So yeah, Lewis, incredibly valuable. I mean, that paragraph alone that we've just been through there, I think people should re-listen to that really. If they take nothing else from this episode, it's those critical tasks that we need to focus on. And it's something that you were really clear on when I went through the Dropship Unlocked Masterclass a few years ago, that if I could just focus on those 3 important tasks, so signing new suppliers, adding their products, and focusing on optimizing my marketing, everything outside of that is a distraction. So if we're not taking an action that's directly linked to each of those, then you are distracting yourself and you're not focusing on what's really going to produce income for your business. And then you can, like you say, you can get distracted potentially after you've done those things, but at least make sure that the first part of every single day is dedicated to those income producing tasks. And that made a huge difference. To bring this home, I guess the story for me, looking back at my performance in my e-commerce business, I remember being stuck and plateauing when I was first getting up and running with my business. And obviously initially I was super focused on these things, and I got to a point where I was plateauing at about the 30k a month mark. And I actually checked in with you, Lewis, and we had a chat within the masterclass. And I was talking about when should I hire a virtual assistant? And you made it quite clear to me that I was ready. I didn't feel like I was ready at the time. But as soon as I had hired that virtual assistant, my time was then free again, and I could see clearly what I should be focusing on. Again, I had time then to sign suppliers, add products, optimize my marketing. And then my revenue actually tripled across the next 2 months. And I put that down to purely focusing on the income producing tasks, seeing where the opportunities were, scaling my ad spend, and it makes a huge difference to my business. And for anyone else wondering why they're at a plateau or why they're not getting off the ground, I think you can simplify it by saying that you're just not focusing on the income producing tasks that Lewis has talked about just then. And as we wrap up today, Lewis, have you got any final thoughts for our listeners to maintain their focus while they're growing an e-commerce business?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's an ongoing challenge, I face every day. So I think one of the things would be just to make sure that you're staying educated on market trends, making sure that you're consistently refining your strategies. E-commerce is ever evolving. The learning never really stops. Now, one of the best ways to do that, I've found, rather than going out and buying all the new material from all the different people or spending all day watching new strategies on YouTube and getting mixed messaging that's conflicting business models that might not all tally up together, join a community and then, listen to podcasts like ours, for example, where the message is always the same in terms of the business model and the way that we do it. We're not suddenly going to pivot and do something completely different. If you can surround yourself with like-minded individuals who are on the same path as you, using the model that you want to use, that can really help sharpen your focus whilst also keeping your skills fresh and sharp as well. So it allows you to be focused, but also not get distracted. So that's definitely something that I would say was a big hack, for me, like creating a community like that of people that we can keep together and help each other out. And always aligning your daily tasks with your broader vision and goals as well. So what are the goals you're aiming for? And then really break that down and plan the tasks that you're going to be working on that next day, the night before, and just say, well, if I could only get one thing done tomorrow, what would that be? Okay, let's say I got that thing done. What would I then work on? And if I could get those two done, what would the next thing? And so you've got 3 things, but really, even if you just got number 1 done the next day and you did nothing else, you could write the day down as a success. And then I think it's just about focusing on the right tasks. We've all heard the cliched phrase of work smart, not hard. Well, I partly agree with that. I think you do still need to work hard initially because we're front loading the work, but there's leveraged ways we can work hard, and we can work hard and smart by making sure that we're doing the right things that we've covered in today's episode. And then finally, I'd say to make sure that you visit htabook.com to explore my home turf advantage model, which is a very clear, focused method for building a successful dropshipping business that thrives on focus and efficiency. And hopefully that can help you keep focused and keep on executing.
Enjoying the podcast? We'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment or a review, and we might just feature it on an upcoming episode. Also, for detailed show notes and resources, head to dropshipunlocked.com/podcast.
If you found value from any episode of this podcast, please take just 10 seconds to leave us a quick 5-star review on your podcast app of choice. It helps us more than you could imagine, and who knows, you might just hear your comments on the show. Thanks for being part of our community. Your support helps us keep delivering a new episode every week.
Now let's answer a question that we've had in from a listener. So thank you for your question. And remember, if you want your question answered on the podcast, all you need to do is leave a comment beneath the YouTube video version of this episode. So that's exactly what JJ Idea has done. So thank you very much for your question. And they have asked, this question keeps stopping me from starting. The more people you teach, that means there'll be more competitors that we make for yourself and to each other between your students. So the market in the UK is not unlimited.
Thanks for your question, JJ Idea. And it's a very common one, actually. And it's something that to be honest, I felt as well when I first started. I had this kind of I want it all for myself kind of mindset of, or I guess you'd call it like a scarcity mindset of thinking, but if I succeed or if someone else succeeds in the market, then I can't succeed as much. That must detract from me being able to succeed. And you can watch from the sidelines and forever convince yourself that the market's getting smaller and smaller. I shouldn't enter. And then one day you'll just move on to the next thing and then do the same again in that market. That's the danger. I'm not saying you're doing that, by the way, JJ Idea. I'm saying that that's what could have happened to me had I not just pulled the trigger and just gone with it. But the proof to me that wasn't the case was that then my businesses grew every year after that. Now, if the theory that you mentioned was true, then with more competitors coming to a market, my business would have declined every year, right? It would have gone, started out making a few sales and then got less and less. But the fact that it was growing means that I must have been adding value to a market, right? And I think the thing that I didn't realize until I started up in business is that the e-commerce market itself, like the whole market, all the customers around it, people buying stuff online, is expanding significantly. So the demand for online shopping is growing each year in the UK. And what that means is that it broadens the scope far beyond the influx of new sellers, because you have new sellers coming into the market, and obviously not all of them have a clear strategy or a community like ours to support them through the inevitable bumpy road that it is getting started as an entrepreneur. So a lot of them will just give up because they hit their first roadblock and think, oh, well, it doesn't work, move on to the next shiny object business model. But the ones that do stick around are then fighting for a slice of an ever-growing and expanding pie, right? So imagine this huge pizza, pie, whatever you want to say, and your job is to just get a small slice of it. Well, if you can identify a market that's already growing, that slice, 0.1% of a niche market in the UK can create a six-figure income for you with a business that has very low overheads, easily replace a good 9-to-5 salary, if you pick the right market, and we focus on that inside week 2 of our masterclass program. That's something that we do to ensure that we're building a business based on data, so that your concern around competition becoming an issue isn't even something you need to think about. My business would not have changed at all had I never looked at any of my competitors. That's the thing that I often go back to, and I think, and I don't really, but like if I had never seen any of my competitors out there, my business wouldn't have changed at all. So I think sometimes we can get distracted by worrying so much about what everyone else is doing and fighting to keep our slice of the pie. But if we don't take any action to actually build the business in the first place, then all we're doing is sitting on the sidelines worrying about a hypothetical scenario that we've proven many times isn't true anyway. So I think it sounds like a bit of a limiting belief, and I think it's one that you can break through, because I know I had the same thing when I started, but I can only explain to you how it feels on the other side of having started, when you realize that the business is growing every year and you realize, something's happening here, and it's because the market that you select is expanding. And so you can kind of ride the wave of that growth, if you like. So for a more detailed discussion on whether dropshipping is becoming too saturated, we actually did an episode specifically on this one that you might want to check out. So it was episode 32 of the podcast, and it was titled, Is Dropshipping Too Competitive? Which goes really deeply into that topic. So that's episode 32.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lewis. Yeah, an important question to cover there, and a whole episode dedicated to it as well as your answer there. So thank you very much, Lewis. And now let's highlight a recent review that we've had in from the podcast. So a big thank you to John Goddard 257 for sharing your thoughts with us. So John Goddard said, Smith/Eardley or Eardley/Smith is the only known UK trusted duo that is trusted to deliver.
Wow, big words. Thank you so much for your review, John Goddard. We really appreciate it, and very happy to hear that you've been enjoying the content and the podcast as well. Now, from our back-end statistics on this podcast, we know that WhatsApp is the most common method of sharing these podcast episodes. So perhaps there's one person in your contact list that you know who might just be interested in running their own online business and getting location independence. The biggest gift that you might be able to give them that could change your friend's life right now could be to just tap that share button and send them the link to this episode on WhatsApp. And if they can use it to then change their life, they'll always look back and have you to thank.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Dropship Unlocked podcast. We hope you're walking away with insights and inspiration.
To kickstart your e-commerce journey, grab a copy of my book, The Home Turf Advantage, at htabook.com. It's a distilled guide based on real experience to help you build your e-commerce venture.
Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more strategies and success stories. And if you like what you heard, a 5-star review would mean the world to us, and you might just get a shout out on an upcoming episode.
And finally, thank you for deciding to spend your time with us today. We can't wait to bring you more insights on the next episode of the Dropship Unlocked podcast.